has died. That's according to the Russian prison service. I want to go straight to Nick Payton-Walsh. Nick, as we get this news, there had been some movement, of course, in the last several weeks. He had been moved to this very difficult work camp up by the Arctic Circle. What more are we learning this morning about when this may have happened, and are there any potential details at this point?
Yeah, look, I should couch this, and what we have at the moment are reports from Russian state media. But frankly, given how the information system in Russia works, it's as close to the state version of events as you might expect to see. And they essentially have, and have had for a while now, the full custody of Alexei Navalny. Two separate state media sources saying he has in fact died. Now, one of those state media sources talks about how he went for a walk on the morning of February the 16th, lost consciousness, and they were unable to revive him. Where is he? Well, recently he was moved to the Yamalo-Nenetsk Autonomous Region. That's up near the Arctic Circle to serve out some of his term in the correctional facility number 3 there. A very harsh regime. The temperatures, the conditions, frankly, for many inmates, a threat to their health by itself. And this, of course, a man who survived a poisoning attempt inside of Russia on internal flight, fled to Germany to convalesce, and then returned to Russia to find his immediate arrest. An interesting point to raise here, though, that essentially he was still part of the information system, able to communicate with the outside world through social media, but once in prison, perhaps represented less of an acute threat to the Kremlin. And the fact, indeed, that he has lost his life in prison now, fingers will point towards Moscow, certainly behind all of that, if indeed there is confirmation of his death. And there appears now to be some of that from the Russian prison service itself. But a stark reminder, perhaps, of how Vladimir Putin views threats around him. I should say there's no reason to point the finger directly at the Kremlin at this stage, although this is a key opposition figure. And as we've seen repeatedly over past years, those who oppose the Kremlin meet a dark end. Most recently, Yevgeny Prigozhin, the man formerly known as Putin's chef, dying in a suspicious plane crash after leading a short-lived rebellion towards the capital itself. So a key moment here, certainly inside of Russia. One, I think, that suggests, if indeed it is proven in the fullness of time, that his death could somehow be attributed to state action. The conditions he was serving his time in there, exceptionally harsh. Certainly shows the fragility of being an opposition member in Russia, even indeed if you are behind bars because of that opposition. And some might potentially say the enduring nervousness of the Putin regime at this time, if indeed people begin to point the fingers in that direction. But a seismic moment, frankly, for those who've observed Navalny's presence in Russia over the past years and the opposition he persistently held to the Kremlin. A rare individual, frankly, to have that level of tenacity and courage. And I think a stark moment, too, as to where Russia's future may be heading. Even though he's behind bars, he appears to have lost his life there. And that, I think, shows, as this war in Ukraine heads into its 3rd year, the vice-like grip, potentially, the Kremlin wishes to sustain over any form of political discourse within its country, and also, too, exactly how deadly and awful it is for those who choose to oppose the Putin administration.
Nick, stay with us. I also want to bring in CNN political and national security analyst David Sanger. David, as we're just hearing there from Nick, as he's reminding us, right, of the work, the life's work in many ways of Alexei Navalny, the fact that he could still communicate with the outside world and continue to influence conversations and perhaps even some politics, resistance politics within Russia. Can you put that into context for us, what it will mean if, in fact, these reports are confirmed?
Well, it seems very likely that it is true, and of course, it's come out as an official statement by the Russian prison sentence. You know, Erica, there's never really been a dissident in modern times like Navalny, one who had such a charismatic effect about him, such followers, and such an ability to communicate, as you suggested, even from prison. And, you know, his decision to go back to Russia from Germany, where he had been recovering from the last effort to kill him with a poisoning, was remarkable. It seemed suicidal to people who had known him or covered him, but it also reflected his own belief that in prison he could still lead a movement. It also tells you something about Vladimir Putin today. Putin has systematically been getting rid of those remnants of opposition to him ahead of some elections that are coming. There was Prigozhin, who, of course, mounted an attempt that looked like military overthrow, although he said he was not trying to overthrow Putin himself, but just his military commanders. He was stopped himself 150 miles from Moscow, and a few months later died in a plane crash. Now Navalny, the most prominent dissident. So Putin enters these elections